Coach. It's Jason with Cron. I know you guys still have one more game on the road trip, but at the tail end of the first road trip of the season, how do you think everything went with the new COVID protocols and all the different day-to-day things that you guys had to do that obviously normally would not do in any other situation?
Yeah, I mean, it's gone as well as possible. We have 2 healthcare workers who are traveling with us and testing us every morning. Everybody is being really good about mask usage. Even during our practices, our coaches all have masks on. During our team meetings, and everybody's eating basically in their own rooms. We're not having very cautious and following all the guidelines.
Steve, it's Ann. How you doing? Along those lines, you're returning to San Francisco when there's a travel quarantine in effect that I think you guys are exempt from. But is there anything you have to be, since you left just as that was going into effect, is there anything you have to be more careful about? Anything you have to prove to the city, and anything you need to talk to your players about that is different than before?
Not that I know of, and we've just basically really tried to emphasize the importance of following the protocols and the guidelines, and obviously everybody's getting tested every single morning. And when we come back, we'll continue to follow all those same recommendations and protocols. So we'll be getting tested. We'll be staying home or going to Chase, and we're going to continue to encourage all of our guys to stay home as much as possible and to keep safe.
Steve, Connor Letourneau, San Francisco Chronicle. I know you simplified the offense a bit yesterday. Could you see sticking with some of those changes long term, just given your personnel, or was that mainly just to help ease them into the system early on in the process?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're trying to squeeze in what would normally be a month's work into a handful of days, given that James and Draymond were not able to take part in camp, and then camp was delayed, and we only had 2 weeks for that. So we're part of it is me adjusting to our personnel and having a better feel for how we should play. Part of it is I frankly haven't done a great job of implementing things in a orderly fashion, and what I mean by that is I should have been probably simpler with what we were delivering right from day one, and I probably tried to put too much detail in, and so what I'm finding, especially given the time off, the 9 months we had off, and the fact that we've barely been together. It's a very new team with Steph coming back. Most of these guys haven't played with Steph. I'm sort of figuring this out on the fly as well. So I overloaded them the first couple of weeks, and I think just simplifying things and getting to very basic play calling, but also basic concepts. We talked about the drive and kick last night. Andrew really changed the game offensively with the way he attacked and then kicked the ball into space. So we've got to continue to emphasize those things and keep it simple.
I know you each year is a different challenge for you, but just looking back on your Warriors tenure so far, do you think this is one of the biggest learning curves you've had as a coach, just given the new personnel and the pandemic protocols and everything that's gone into play?
No, it's by far the biggest challenge that I've had and that our staff has had in this 7th season, given all those factors that you just mentioned. 9 months without playing, and then boom, 2-week training camp, and play basketball and your starting center hasn't taken part in that training camp. That's a lot to bite off, and so we have to adjust to those circumstances, and that's what I'm finding that I'm doing myself. the other factor that I think is really interesting and important to understand is that Steph is a very unique player. And so, the way we've played over the last 6 years, in some ways it's sort of, let's create chaos and thrive out of chaos. That doesn't happen in 2 weeks. And most of these guys haven't played with Steph, other than Loon and Damian Lee and Draymond, most of these guys haven't played with him. So, over the last couple of weeks, we're creating a lot of that chaos. Steph's, doing his thing and giving the ball up and flying around. It's not easy to understand how to recognize that stuff. Most of the guys that we brought in over the last 6 years, it took them 2 or 3 months to really feel comfortable. And, you throw all that stuff together, no summer league, no training camp, 2 weeks training camp. And I hope I don't sound like I'm making excuses. I'm just trying to give everybody an idea of why we are where we are right now. So by simplifying things and just trying to get to basic concepts, I think we can put guys in a position to succeed and then evolve from there as we play more games.
Steve, Wes Goldberg with Bay Area News Group. What have you thought about Juan Toscano-Anderson's play this season so far, and do you anticipate starting him Tuesday again?
Juan has been fantastic. He's just one of those guys who understands the game at a really, really deep level. So every time he goes in, he's setting the screen at the right time. He's making the back cut at the right time. He's sliding over defensively to help at the exact right time. He's a little bit like Draymond in that his brain is on high alert all the time at both ends of the floor. And so I'm a huge fan of Juan's. I think he absolutely belongs in this league, and especially for our team, I think he makes a ton of sense. So as long as Draymond is out, he's going to play minutes, and I would anticipate starting him. We're obviously red hot right now, so I don't want to disrupt our winning streak.
Hi, Coach. Carlos Ramirez, NBC Bay Area and Telemundo. A lot's been said about James's need to adapt his body to the NBA game, meaning the rhythm, playing every 2-3 days. I was wondering about the mental aspect, the intellectual aspect of basketball. You just said you thought you put a lot of information on the guy's plate. How do you see him adapting to having to scout a team every 2 or 3 days? Yeah,
it's all overwhelming, really, and he's handling it beautifully, Carlos. He's such a willing learner. He doesn't take coaching personally. He absorbs it. He accepts it because he understands it's all part of the process. But there's just so much going on in an NBA game at one time, and that's why it takes guys time to really blossom. And he's already showing what he can do, but this period, this season, in a lot of ways, is really about understanding what's happening on the floor and absorbing all those pictures, as I like to say. It's just these games are a series of pictures. A side screen and roll, you got to be here. Middle drive, you got to be here. You got to be in position. You got to be talking. The center is basically the middle linebacker, so you got to be talking. You got to be calling out coverages. And, now imagine doing that without playing 3 college games and then not playing at all for over a year and then not having training camp. It's insane. What we're asking James to do is insane, and he's handling it beautifully because he's willing to take those early lumps.
Hey, Steve, William Hammonds here with Sports Fans Rep. I just want to kind of follow up with Ann's question in terms of there's a 10-day quarantine for all those who travel out of San Francisco. How does that work with you guys returning?
That's a great question, and frankly, it's not a question for me. It's a question for our organization. We basically follow rules, and so we're on the road and we're coming back, and we know that every day we're going to test and we're going to stay at home and we're going to wear our masks and we're going to stay safe. But this is really more of a question for the organization and for the NBA. And so I'm I'm not really the person qualified to answer that.
Steve, Matt Murray from Forbes Sports here. Just wondering, you've talked a lot about kind of preaching patience, new roster, people haven't played with Stephen Curry, James Wiseman obviously needing to be developed over the season. How do you balance that preaching patience with kind of the clock ticking on the core of the team?
Well, you just do. I mean, you have to work within the circumstances that are present, and hopefully you pick off some wins like we did last night. And I do think this team will have a really healthy learning curve, and I think we're going to get better quickly as we get more and more accustomed to what we're doing. And if anytime we can win a game like we did last night, it lightens the mood. Everybody's spirits are up, and that creates a better learning environment as well.
Is the expectation that Draymond will debut in the first game of the homestand, or is that still kind of to be determined?
That's the hope. It's still to be determined, but based on the scrimmage and the conditioning from the other day, we decided we'd give him 4 or 5 more days of conditioning before we reevaluated.
Coach, what have you seen so far from the Pistons?
Nothing. I haven't watched 1 second of their game. I'll watch some on the plane today.
Steve, you guys have been out-rebounded every game by double digits. You lose Marquise Chris, who's been your best rebounder per minute. Where do you go with that aspect of the game, and is there a plan to sort of get somebody to do what Marquise was doing for you?
It's more a reflection of how porous our defense has been, Monty, because we're just not building the tight shell that we try to build, and because that shell is being penetrated, then there's all kinds of lanes for offensive rebounds, and we got to do some detail stuff too. We got to do a better job boxing out. Guards have to get to the elbows for the long rebounds, but it's really about our defense. Our defense has been very poor for 3 games, and that's reflected in the rebounding total.
How do you like the two-man game between the emerging two-man game with Steph and James?
It's great. It's going to be tough to handle, and we're going to be relying more and more on that.
What role do you see Kent Bazemore playing this season?
I think Kent is going to be our vet. He's already a voice in film sessions and talking to guys privately on the side, and then his time's going to come. And I've talked to him about that. He's going to play. It's just it has to happen organically. Right now we're trying to figure out who our team is. I know what Kent can do. I've watched him play for years. We're trying to take a look at some other guys, trying to find some rotations. So right now he's on the outside looking in, but he knows that eventually he'll be in there.
Steve, what do you think is happening with the three-point defense from what you've seen on film?
Just everything. We're not connected at all. As soon as one thing breaks down defensively, then you're dead. And we're having breakdowns left and right, and then teams are just driving and kicking and moving the ball. So just got to be sharper and more connected defensively.
What have you thought about how Kelly Oubre's handled some of his offensive struggles? Obviously, he was still a factor defensively yesterday, even despite his misses.
I think Kelly's handled it beautifully. Last night was a great example. His shots weren't going, but he was defending like crazy out there, bringing energy, putting pressure on the ball, and he helped us win the game through that defense. So it's always hard to go to a new team and make shots because you're not familiar with where your shots are coming from, and you can multiply that by 10 given that we don't have much feel for each other and we've only been playing together for a couple of weeks. So all that's going to happen. He's going to start making shots as we all get more comfortable.